Hi, and welcome back to the show. My name's Larnie. I am your host, and I'm so excited that you chose to be here to listen in today because, as you know, this season, maybe you don't know. If not, welcome on in, let me tell you. But as you may know, this season is all about talking about things that we don't necessarily always talk about and giving them a little bit of a hypno and subconscious perspective. Because as a hypnotherapist, I see a lot of things. I contemplate a lot of things, and I think we could live so much more satisfied, joyful, fulfilled, enjoyable lives if we allowed ourselves to shed light on the topics and the conversations that sometimes we shy away from or just forget that could be beneficial for us to have. So, in the theme of that today, we are talking about friendship. And you know what? I actually think we're probably talking about female friendship because that's what my experience is with. And I can only speak from my experience. So maybe you can take this and apply this to all of your friendships, but I know for certain this is definitely going to relate to you. If you are someone who has, you have your girls, right? You've got friends, or you are navigating some tricky friend situations. Tune in, sit down, grab your water, your tea, whatever you need, and let's dive into it. So, for some context, I think that there is more and more conversation around friendship, sisterhood, all of this happening today, which is amazing. But I think even just anecdotally, we can agree that if you were to look on social media or just out in the world, there's still so much more conversation around romantic relationships. Friendships still today, I feel, get a little bit of a backseat when we're talking about the different kinds of relationships in our lives. And I don't think we need to do that anymore. And if you're listening to this, then you probably also agree. So let's just start with kind of a brief overview of how we're going to talk about friendship today. We're going to talk about some of the life lessons that are on my heart really now as I'm someone in my 30s. I mean, I am 30, but I'm in the decade now. And I do think that as you get to different stages of your life, friendships evolve and the way that you understand friendship changes. So we're going to go through all of that. And I'm also going to give you a couple of questions to think about wherever you are in your life, whether that is with having lots of friends, maybe that's letting go of some friendships. We're going to get to all of it. So to start, friendship. I think we all gotta know what we're talking about when we talk about friendship, right? Or do we? And so I want to take a moment to just give a little bit of context, a little bit of structure to this conversation and say, when I'm talking about friends, I am talking about the people who you chat to, it's not just someone who you are nice to and they're nice to you. It's someone who you talk about life things with. Maybe you hit them up when you're going through something. Maybe they do the same for you. Maybe you invite them over. Maybe you go out to dinners. Maybe, you're invested in your lives a little bit more. And I think it's important to understand what friendship is to you, because I actually feel that in this social media age where, there were Facebook friends and there's social media followers, there's all of this stuff. I think sometimes we can get confused about who's actually a friend and who is someone who's, like super nice, someone I enjoy, but not necessarily someone that I'm investing a whole lot with, but, I like them. They're a good person, so I think that's my definition of friendship, is someone who I'm invested in their life and they're invested in mine. And that investment might vary. We'll talk about the ebbs and flows of friendship, but for me, that kind of investment is important. Your mileage may vary. So actually, even right now, I would invite you to pause and just ask yourself, what is my definition of friendship? What does friendship look like and feel like to me? I'm thinking about it. If you're listening to this, I took that pause because I was really getting into the vision of really good friendship. What does that feel like? What does that look like? How does that show up in your life? Or how do you want it to show up in your life if you're in a season where friends have not been showing up in the way that you would want them to? Ask yourself those questions, because you knowing how you feel about friendship is going to be the cornerstone to this conversation that we're going to have. And only you can really define what a friend is to you. Only you will know what feels good. I'm going to talk about my experience with friends. You're going to hear other people talking about their experience with friends. None of that actually matters if you don't know what friendship means to you. So write that question down. What does friendship mean to me? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What constitutes friendship? And maybe you don't have all the answers right now, but give yourself some time over the next couple of days to really sit with that question, because I think you're going to learn a lot about yourself when you do. Not only about what you want, but also, okay, if this is what I want in a friendship, how am I showing up? Am I showing up as that person in other people's lives? Okay, I already can tell this is going to be a good one. Okay, so now that we've got that first question down there, let's talk about the realities of friendship. So I would say growing up in general, you have friends who are in these sort of shared activities. Maybe you go to school with them. Maybe you do some sort of after school activities, whether it's a sport, whether it's theater, whether it's music. Like, you are usually put kind of in communities, whether you choose it or not. And there are people there who are doing the same thing. And so you become friends, right? That's how most of it usually works. You get older, and maybe you stick with those friends through your, middle school and elementary school, or elementary school to middle school. Maybe you kind of switch things up as you get a little bit older. You figure out what your kind of identity is. And look, we're talking about like teenage identity, right? So this is not the most fully developed you will be, but you start saying, oh, well, I actually really prefer doing, theater to doing soccer. So I'm going to choose to have more friends who are in this world. And that's how you start to kind of build these friendships. Or at least that's what my experience was, is that you are put in a place, you find people who you like who are doing similar things. And what's really interesting about this is that I think that this creates almost a false expectation of what friendship will look like moving forward. Now, what do I mean by that? First of all, I don't think there's anything wrong with the way that we make friends as kids. I think it's totally normal. But I think on some level, it doesn't really show us what the many different ways are that we can make friends. And so it actually doesn't matter when we're young. Like, you don't need to make friends any other way. You don't need to like put yourself out there. You literally can just like, do what you're doing and kind of muddle your way and find the people who you want to hang out with. But then when you get older, let's say you graduate high school, maybe you are going to college, maybe you're pursuing something else, maybe you're taking a gap year, whatever it is, you start to realize, oh, life is starting to get different for me and the people who I used to spend time with and these new people who are coming into my life. And I think that transition from childhood to adulthood marks a really dramatic shift in the way that we access our friends and in the way that we cultivate community. Instead of the community being sort of created and us just showing up in it, whether or not we enjoy that as a child, once you're an adult, there is no guaranteed community, so to speak, right? Just because you are in the same class as somebody doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to have, let's say in college, like you're not going to maybe have the same major, maybe you're not going to have the same interests. Like suddenly the world becomes much more diverse, much bigger. It gets like exciting and all these big things happen. But I think that's also the time when we start to realize, oh, how do I make friends here? Like, what does this mean to me? And I think that's really the age that like 18, 19, 20, when you're out in the world for the first time in whatever way that is, that you start getting some clarity for yourself about what it looks like to build community and what it looks like to have friends. And I think personally, this is my experience where in college, suddenly I had to make new friends for the first time in a very long time. Now, this is not true for everybody, right? I had a friend who moved so much during their childhood that they were kind of, constantly in that cycle of meeting new people, making new friends. So obviously it's going to be different, but I think you start to get on this bigger scale where, okay, maybe your parents don't know your friends for the first time. Maybe you are exploring or experimenting with different hobbies, different ways of passing time that you didn't have access to before. And so this is like, okay, you start to like find these new communities, these new pockets. Maybe you go through college, you like make the friends there. There's even things I would say that are even built into colleges to help foster that. And then you go out into the great big world. Whatever you did, whether you went to college, whether you decided to do something else, you go out into the great big world, and suddenly people are making decisions that are so different than yours. Suddenly, there are people who are really settling down, finding their life partner. There's people who are getting married. There's people who are having kids. There's people who are moving across the country. There's people who are moving out of the country. There's people who are moving here and there. There's people who are switching their careers. Like, suddenly life really starts to pick up and nobody's doing the exact same thing. And so if you're still operating on this much younger understanding of how to make friends, you might feel a little bit out of place. You might feel a little bit confused. You might feel a little bit lonely. It might feel really difficult. And I will tell you, me personally, I really struggled after college because everyone that I knew, everyone that I liked, left the city that I was in. I went to school in Pittsburgh. And everybody left Pittsburgh. They went to New York. They went to San Francisco. They went to wherever. It was not Pittsburgh. And I was really faced with like, oh, wow, how do I make friends? How do I do this when I truly have no structure at all? I am just a human. I am literally just a girl out in the world. What do I do with that? And I think that is the question that for many, many people in their 20s, maybe even into their 30s, start to ask is like, okay, well, as the people that I used to spend time with start doing different things, what does that mean for me? So, for example, I have a group of friends that I have been friends with since I was 7, 8 years old, most of my life. And I am so grateful that we are still connected. But absolutely, the four of us have such different lives right now. We are so fortunate that right now we're actually all living in proximity to each other for the first time in like a long time, for the first time since we went to college, which is really cool and really fun. But it's so interesting. It's like two of the people in the group are married. The other two of us are single, but one person has a really, the one who's single has a really serious relationship that she's in. And one's thinking about buying or like moving houses and getting pregnant, and the other one just got married. It's like you just look at the four of us and you can see so much is different. And so it's been really interesting as an adult to say, oh, wow, how do I make new friends when I'm in a new place in my life? And also, how do I maintain the friendships that I've had, even though all of our priorities might be different? And that's not to say that like at our core, we're fundamentally different people or something, but I think you understand. Someone who is married is in a different place in their life than someone who is single. Someone who owns a house is in a different place than someone who rents. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. Absolutely not at all. But what I'm saying is that the details of your experience are going to adjust what feels relevant to you. And the connections that are easy or, like kind of natural to make. Like, for example, I think when people find out that, they're talking to someone who also has a kid, it's very easy for them to connect on that level, right? If someone finds out that, the person they're talking to just got married and they got married a year ago, instant connection. If someone finds out that, someone is working in this field and they also work in this field, very instant connection, right? There's just those things that allow you to have a little bit more ease, a little bit more fluidity when you're meeting someone. And so if you are no longer falling into those same categories, what does it look like to bridge that gap? These are the things that we're going to get into. So the first thing that I think we're going to talk about is making friends as an adult. Why you should do it. I mean, to me, it seems obvious. To me, it seems so obvious, but I don't think it is. So maybe we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about why making friends is so important and also how to do it in a way that feels really natural or that feels good. Yeah? Okay. So friendship is a really important relation or type of relationship to have. And I do believe that there are more studies that are coming out now, specifically around friendship, that are saying, this is something that is beneficial, that it is good for our health to have friendships. And you can even just reflect on your own life and think of the positive ways that friendship has impacted your life, the ways that you felt supported, the ways that you felt seen, the ways that you felt understood, that maybe you didn't feel with any other relationship in your life at that time. And I think if we're also talking about people who want to be in romantic relationships, friendship in the past, and honestly, sometimes still today, depending on who you're talking to, I think friendship has been seen as this sort of secondary relationship to romantic relationships. We all know the girls who, as soon as they get into a relationship, they're gone. You never hear from them. And then when they break up, suddenly they're back. We all know those people. Why? Because they exist, because there is still this narrative that we should be aspiring first and foremost and solely and completely to a romantic relationship. And I am not here to throw shade on romantic relationships. I think it's beautiful and wonderful. But what I am here to talk about is that friendship is not in competition with romance. Friendship, it's like saying that like oranges are in competition with apples. It's like, no, they're both fruit, yeah, but like they give you such different things. So I think the first thing that we can start doing is really inquire within ourselves about, how do I feel about friendship? How important is friendship to me? And why is that the level of importance that it has, right? So if you are someone who has always prioritized romantic relationships over friendships, why is that? Like literally sit down. I mean, hopefully you have a notebook at this point. If you've been listening to this podcast, I ask you a lot of questions. Write these down. If you have been prioritizing romantic relationships over friendships, why? What benefit does that give you? It must be giving you some benefit if you are doing it. And I say that knowing that on a subconscious level, everything that we do benefits us, but on a conscious level, we might not realize why we're doing what we're doing. So that's one question to ask. It's also useful to really ask yourself, what do I want the relationships in my life to feel like? Like, do I want there to be a flow of friendship? Do I want there to be this like abundant resource of friendship that is there? Do I want to have just like one friend? Am I more of like very deeply one-on-one, not interested in like getting the group dinners or being in the group chat? What do I want that to look like and feel like? Because depending on where you are in your life, you might not have actually sat down and asked yourself that. And that might have changed. I have always been a part of groups of friends until I became an adult. And then, I still have my group of friends from childhood, but I have not yet been in a group of friends who became friends as adults. And I would love that. Like, I desire that so much. It's actually something I really plan on cultivating when I move, because I just think it sounds so lovely and so beautiful and so fulfilling. But maybe you want something different. Maybe you just want 3 really good friends who know nothing about the other ones, and you hang out in your individual ways, and that's beautiful and perfect. But if you don't know what you want within friendship, then it's going to be more difficult to get it. I also think it's useful to reflect on what were the moments when I really felt good in friendship? What were those moments? That's going to help you understand more about what kind of relationships, what kind of friendships feel really, really good to you. Honestly, I have so many thoughts about this, so I'm going to loop back around to what we were talking about in the beginning, which is prioritizing your friendships, where you prioritize that. There's no bad or good answer here, right? Like, there's no wrong or right. What I'm really getting at is I'm giving you these questions because I think you want to create an intentional dynamic with the friends in your life. We can't be intentional if we don't know what we're making. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Okay, so we've talked a bit about why friends are good for us. We feel good. We feel supported. We don't want to put everything on one person, right? We don't want to put everything on a romantic partner if that's someone who's in your life. We don't want to put everything on our mom if that's someone who you're close to. You might not even want to put everything on your therapist. I mean, I have no problem doing that, but maybe your mileage may vary. So I think having friends is such a valuable emotional resource. And it can be a resource for other things as well. You never know what kind of networks open up because of your friendships. You never know what kind of experiences you get to have because of your friendships. So there's just honestly unlimited reasons why friendships are so valuable to us. And so let this be a little nudge or a stronger nudge to really consider what kind of friendships you want. And then that leads us into how to find them, how to maintain them. And I think that's going to be, it's going to be similar and different depending on when that friend has entered your life. So let's talk about the friends you're going to make as an adult. So I would say I honestly am pretty good at making friends. I have always prioritized friendships. I think they are probably the type of relationship that I have consistently prioritized the most in my life. I just love friendship. I love my friends so much. I love being on a journey with people and having it feel so just supportive and so communal and so like we're all cheering each other on, like we're all on the same team, you know? I love that. I find it really exciting. And I have made friends in so many ways as an adult. So like I said, right out of college, I really struggled to make friends and I wasn't really sure how to get started. So I would say the ways that I started making friends, and honestly, I made a lot of friends online in Pittsburgh. I didn't make as many in person. Maybe we'll get into that. But one of the things that I started doing was being really just myself in any of the places that I went. So if I was going to a yoga class, if I was, oh my gosh, one of my very best friends I met on Clubhouse. Like, do you remember that app? I met her on Clubhouse and it's like, we're sisters and I can't believe that we don't even live in the same country. But it's like, I just decided to be myself wherever I was. And I'm the kind of person who I do have innate curiosity about people. I like learning about people. I like asking questions. Obviously, you can tell that by now. And so, for example, with the friend that I made through Clubhouse, we were both in a French class. And I like tapped on her, you know, her photo or however you found more information about someone. And I read her bio and I was like, oh, like, I think we would really get along. And I just like messaged her and asked if she wanted to practice French together. And she said yes. And literally the rest is history. And I think sometimes when you think about making friends, especially if you're someone who isn't maybe so outgoing, you're not someone who would necessarily put yourself out there and ask a question. Sometimes it can feel very scary. Like, how do you do it? Like, what's the way? But honestly, I would say most people, the majority of people are really, really nice people and kind. And I guess I just live by this belief that if I'm a nice person and I'm a good person, I'm going to be met with nice and good people as well. And so asking a question as simple as like, hey, do you want to practice French together? It was just that. She said, yes, we scheduled it. Like, that was literally it. It actually didn't involve a whole lot. It just involved a single question. And I think the same thing can happen whether you're online or whether you're in person. It's like sometimes it's just saying like, oh my gosh, your sweater is so cute, and letting there be a conversation. The thing is, you can't make friends if you sit in your house and don't talk to anybody. You know what I mean? Like, you can sit in your house, but you gotta talk to people, or you can get out of your house and talk to people. But like, if you want to make friends, start doing things that you enjoy that will put you in situations that will bring you to similarly minded people. It's like recreating those environments in a way of what you had when you were younger. Go and take the pottery class. Go and join the running club. Go and sign up for the solo women's trip to Morocco. Like, do those things. And none of this has to be especially expensive, right? I'm taking a tap class at the community college. It's $10 a class. For me, that feels very, very, very affordable, especially when I see the prices of tap classes at like other studios. But find something that's within your range. Go to the library. Like, that's completely free. You know, they always have events there. And in Pittsburgh, actually, they would have these like language speaking nights where it would be like either Japanese or German or Arabic or whatever the language was. So look into, there's just so many ways. Like, money is just not going to be an issue for you making friends because, first of all, there are so many ways. Literally, the example of me reaching out to someone on Clubhouse, completely free, going and being like, go to the farmer's market, strike up a conversation with your favorite, like, peach seller or something, right? Like, it really does start by you doing things that you enjoy. And then you get more comfortable doing it, right? So I realize some of you listening may be like, I'm comfortable going out there and speaking to people, but some of you might not be. So that was for you, okay? So once you start connecting with people as an adult, then I think there's this really interesting time when you start to consider, okay, so what is their capacity? What is my capacity? What do we really want this dynamic to look like? Because it's going to be different for so many people. It's going to be different if, someone has kids. It's going to be different if someone's single, if someone's in a relationship, if someone is taking care of elderly parents, if someone is traveling a lot for work. Like, there's just a lot of different factors that are going to go into it. But I think setting up some sort of, it doesn't have to be like super official, but if you know that you like to talk to people via voice note, tell them that. If you know that text is the only thing that works for you because you never have a moment to listen to a voice note, tell them that. Like, be really honest with the people that you are cultivating these friendships with. If you would like to go out to brunch once a month, tell them that. Like, I think the ways that I have been able to grow a lot of my adult friendships is by being super honest and being super open and saying, yeah, like, I actually love, like, there's one friend that I have who we send each other 30-minute WhatsApp messages like multiple times a week, sometimes even in the same day. Like, that's the way that we communicate. But for another friend, that would never work for her. And so I think it's really important to be able to have those conversations and say, hey, this is the way that I like to keep in touch. What works best for you? And that just leaves it open. Like, I think a lot of friendship, especially as an adult, is being brave and being honest and saying, this is what I want. This is what I have the capacity for. Does this work for you? And if it works for them, great. If it doesn't, you find a way to make it work for both people, or you don't and you move on. Like, either way is okay. Either way, you're learning and growing and creating new connections, which is so, so, so healthy for you. So there are some differences, I would say, when it comes to maintaining a friendship with a new friend that you've met as an adult and maintaining a friendship with the friends who you've known since childhood. So if you are fortunate enough to have friends since childhood, first of all, like, enjoy that, feel really good about that, because that's so special and doesn't always happen. And I think I can only share, from my experience on this, but be open to evolving what that friendship is like. So, for example, one of my very best friends who I've known basically my entire life, we had a little bit of a drifting away period during college. I think we were both, growing, kind of spreading our wings, exploring the world. And then maybe towards the end of college, we reconnected. So when we reconnected, it felt in some ways like I was meeting someone new, and also like I was re-meeting someone who I'd known before. Obviously, like, I had known her this whole time, but she had different interests now and different things that were exciting to her, and we had different points of connection. And so the first sort of tip that I can give about maintaining these longer term friendships is leave some space for everyone to grow, right? Like, allow your friends and allow yourself to evolve and to have these new interests, to take on these different hobbies. I remember that this particular friend, she's always been very much into fashion, but when we reconnected, she was talking a lot about her capsule wardrobe. And this was probably circa 2012. So I feel like it was of the time, right? And she was talking a lot about her capsule wardrobe. She was talking a lot about colors and styles and like fabrics and all of this stuff. I knew nothing about this stuff. I had no idea, but you better bet I sat down and I listened. And when we would talk, I would ask her questions about that. I would express interest in her new interest, in her new hobby. And I learned a lot. And also it opened my eyes to ways that I could think about my wardrobe. Like, it was this beautiful sort of gift that she was able to give by sharing this new thing with me and that I was able to receive because I was open to it. And I think especially with the longer term friendships, it can be really hard to see someone change. And sometimes you can ask yourself, like, well, where do I fit? Like, do I still fit in this person's life? But I think in a situation like this, where both people are invested now in like learning about the person at this stage and understanding what it is that's interesting to them and excites them and captivates them, then you can absolutely continue to build this friendship, and it gets to be built on something that's even more relevant. You know, one of the things that I always find so boring personally is if I get together with people who I've known a long time and all they want to do is talk about the past. And I'll be so honest, obviously it's great to have these wonderful memories, but I personally do not care what someone I never even spoke to in high school is still doing like 13 years later. You know what I mean? Like it truly doesn't matter to me. Irrelevant. And so talking about that, count me out. But if you want to talk about something you're interested in, if you want to talk about something that you're excited about in this moment, oh my gosh, yes, I am all the way in. And so I think sometimes those longer term friendships, they struggle because they're only based off of, oh, do you remember so-and-so? Oh, do you remember this teacher, that teacher, whatever? And they aren't able to make that shift, that transition into who you are today. And that's really the key. If all parties involved want to modernize the relationship, you know, want to do like a gut renovation and focus on who you are today instead of who you were as a teenager, that relationship really has staying power. And I feel very, very blessed that the relationships that have continued to last have been based on everyone really desiring to update the other person about their life and to keep things relevant, keep things current, keep things, you know, engaged in that way. So in a best case scenario, you are able to go along on that journey. Now, there are also going to be times when a friendship that you had for a long time just isn't working anymore. And I have definitely faced moments with these longer term friendships where I've had to have a very open conversation and been like, hey, you know, our communication style isn't working, or I feel like I want to talk to you more, but I don't know what your capacity is. Like, and when I've had those conversations in the past, they've actually usually been really successful. And the other person hasn't even realized that they were, you know, pulling back or, you know, not engaging in the same way as before. And it allowed them to think about what was going to work better for them. And for me to also think about, okay, well, what is it that I'm actually looking for? Am I looking for a resource outside of myself that I actually have within myself? Or do I just genuinely want to connect with this person? And so those conversations are so good, and they can also feel very scary. I remember anytime I've had a conversation like this, I have been nervous. I have talked to my therapist about it. I have practiced what I'm going to say, you know, like that is very real. But the friendships that are wanting to continue, those conversations are just a part of it. Right? And then there's the friendships where maybe you feel like there should be that conversation, but neither one of you ever brings it up. And I think in that case, you know, the relationship is going to fizzle, right? We can't maintain a relationship where we aren't on the same page, essentially. So that also happens. And I think we can expect that there are some friends that are going to grow and evolve with us for decades. And there are some that are going to pop in for a couple months, a couple weeks, a couple years, and then pop out. And realizing that that is all okay and that's all healthy and that's all normal, I think is so important. Because in addition to having these very strong societal expectations that we will prioritize romantic relationships above everything else, I think we also are told a lot, we're given a lot of messaging around, you know, oh, you have this like one best friend who's with you for life. You have this like core group who's with you for everything. Guess what? That might not be the case. Maybe it will be, and maybe it won't be. And one isn't more normal or a sign that you are a better or worse person than the other. And so I think it's really useful, especially when we're thinking about the friendships that didn't last, the friendships that fizzled, the friendships that no longer are in our lives, to realize that wasn't a failure. There's nothing wrong with you or maybe with them either. Like maybe that relationship just reached the end of its cycle Maybe it served its purpose. Maybe the direction that you both were going was just too different, and there was no chance that you could bridge the gap, or nobody wanted to bridge the gap enough to do it. And that's okay. I think resistance is usually what makes us the most unhappy. Resistance is usually what makes us feel self-doubt or guilt or, oh, could I have done, should I have done? If we are resisting the natural flow of the relationships that come in and out of our lives, we're just going to end up really unhappy and really full of self-doubt and not trusting ourselves. And you just don't have to live your life that way. And so while it can be so painful, and oh my gosh, trust me, I have had several really painful friend releases. I'm still working on the language around it, but I've had so many of those experiences, not so many, I mean, several enough to know what they are and to think, wow, when I look back, I'm so grateful for the role that person played in my life. I'm so grateful for what I learned. And yeah, the end of that relationship either, didn't go the way that I would have liked or was really painful, but I'm still here and I still have friends. And I think sometimes we fear that this one important person who leaves our life is going to shatter everything. And frankly, real honest with you, I had a best friend in college. And when that relationship ended, I had such a hard time. I had a really hard time because I realized it wasn't actually a healthy friendship because I had completely lost myself in that friendship. And I took a while to rebuild who I was, to remember what I enjoyed doing, to be able to go and have a full life again. And so if you're afraid that losing one friendship or really one person at all in your life is going to completely ruin you, I really invite you to remember who you are in yourself, who you are outside of that relationship, because it doesn't matter whether it's a friendship, whether it's a lover, whether it's a parent, whether it's a child, you are always you outside of that relationship. And that one relationship does not define you at all, at all, at all. You are so much more than just a friend. You are so much more than just a friend to one specific person. You are so many things. So please remember that and let that be a reminder for you if you are either navigating the loss of a friend or navigating sort of this new world outside of the dynamics that you thought were going to be really solid and there for you. You are so many wonderful things. Okay? So I could honestly keep talking about friendship for a very, very long time. And one of the last things that maybe I'll add here is to maybe just kind of gently evaluate where you are in your life right now and how it's feeling. Just setting aside the friendship topic for a moment, just consider where you are in your life and how it feels and what's going really well. And maybe after listening to all this, you're like, you know what? I'm actually great. I'm actually good. Done, dusted, good to go. But maybe as you reflect on where you are in your life, you do start to notice, oh, there are these little spaces where actually I don't have everything that I would want here, or I would love for it to be different. And so maybe you can look a little bit closer and ask yourself, well, what is it about that I would like to be different? Because maybe it is that there is a desire for more friendship. Maybe the type of friendship you have, right? Maybe you want to bring in more or call in more in-person friends. Maybe you want to call in more international friends. Maybe you're actually, I just want more time for myself. I just want to do things that I want to do alone. Amazing. But I think if we start by understanding, going way back to the top of this episode, if you start understanding what you desire your friendships to look like, how you want them to show up in your life, then you can start kind of zooming out and say, okay, well, what is my life like right now? Am I really happy with it? What's getting in the way, if anything, of me bringing in more of the in-person friends or more of the international friends or more of the groups of friends or more of the one-on-one friends? Is there something getting in the way of that? on a subconscious level, because you know I'm always going to go there, if you don't have what you want, there probably is something that's getting in the way of you feeling comfortable to have it. So start getting curious, start asking yourself, where did all of these thoughts and beliefs come from about my friendships? Where were they? Like, who taught them to me? Why did I take them on? Why did it feel important to hold on to them? And what am I actually ready to release? I hear so many people talk about how they struggle with female friendships, and there's like a lack of trusting other women, or there's a lack of feeling supported by other women. And whenever I hear that, I just think those are subconscious beliefs that you can literally just get rid of. So consider where you are, consider how you feel, consider how you want to feel. And then start asking yourself, how can I feel more that way? How can I feel more safe, more easeful, more joyful, more ready, more trusting around this topic of whatever kind of friendships I am looking to make? You might be surprised what you discover. You might be like, oh, I can journal this out and be good. You might be like, actually, Lauren, I need a book hypnotherapy session with you. By all means, happy to help you. But start there, see what you can uncover, and then you get to take the fun steps of actually implementing what it is that you desire. And they can be baby steps, or they can be big steps. At the time of this episode, we are about halfway through the year. And so I think it's a really nice time to just reflect. What do you want to do? How do you want the next, 6-ish months to go? You get to choose. You get to decide what your relationship to friendship is like. Isn't that cool? Like, isn't that the coolest thing? Agency, the fact that we have so much choice. Oh, I love it. I can't get enough. All right, friends. I feel like I've given quite a lot for us all to think about. So go stay hydrated, get some rest, take care of yourself, and noodle around with some of these questions and let me know what you discover. I always would love to hear. So in the meantime, take good care, and I'll see you back here in the next podcast. Bye.